Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mr. Olusola. We're having series this afternoon, and the topic of our series is what we call the creative story. The creative story. We want to look at the story behind creation. There are different legends about the story of creation. We have the traditional story about the creation. We also have the scientific theory about the creation. Then we also have the biblical or Islamic theory. Most outstanding story or history about the creation is what we refer to as religious or theological story about the creation. The story is documented in the scripture, the popular book called Bible. And the book of the Bible, particularly Genesis, tells us about this story of how God created heaven and earth. And then on the seventh day, he rested, which we refers to as Sabbath day, and God rested. So to begin, the word Genesis is derived from a Greek word which simply stands for what we refer to as beginning. Another synonym for beginning is what we refer to as sources, and so on, or starting, or new, and so on and so forth. And that's why the book of Genesis tells us that in the beginning, the world was without form, and every part of the universe was without shape. So that was what was in place at the beginning. Then Genesis also tells us about the first man that came into being, which we refer to as Adam. Then the book of Genesis also tells us about the first woman, which refers to as Eve. Then the same book of Genesis tells us about the first covenant, that is promise. The book of Genesis tells us about the first covenant that God had with man or mankind. Then the same book of Genesis also tells us about the first sin. So the book of Genesis is just an embryo of knowledge on its own, because it points to every first thing that happened. The first rapist was recorded in the book of Genesis. The first murderer was recorded in the book of Genesis. So everything, the first was recorded in the book of Genesis. And that's why we said from its etymological evolution, Genesis means beginning, means the starting point, the first history, and everything that has to do with the first was recorded in the book of Genesis. And that's why we'll be looking at the creative story this afternoon. When in our Bible, we talk about the creative story, and there are two stories in the Bible that point to the creation of the universe and everything therein in the universe. These two creative stories are found in the Bible. So we are not talking about the scientific story of the creation or the traditional story of the creation where we talk about the legend from our different traditions perspective. No, we are looking at the biblical story or the biblical account. So we find the first creative story in the book of Genesis, as I've mentioned, the book of Genesis chapter 1 to its very end, then part of chapter 2 also. This covers the first creative story. So the summary of the first creative story is that the first thing that God created was light. Yes. And the light is what refers to as day. Then God also created darkness, which refers to as night. So we refers to it as two great lights, or two powerful elements of the universe, day and night, or light and darkness. So these are the first thing that God created in the first day. And for we to understand the importance of this creation is that it allows for visuality, so that God can see clearly every other thing that is needed for creativity. Because if you want to test how evil darkness is, try to look for a stick of matches in the dark hour. You know that darkness connotes evil, and it is not a good thing. So God decided to create light so that he could see and then have a good vision of what to bring out of the universe. Then the second thing that God created is what we refer to as the firmament, which we call heaven. That was the second thing that God created. Then under this, God separated the earth from water. So the firmament was created. Then on the third day, God created vegetation, that is from the land. They command the land to give birth to all kinds of vegetations, where we now have the earth, the seeds, the vegetable, the grasses, the trees that we can point to today. God created these things on the second day. Then on the third day, then on the fourth day, the heavenly bodies were also created. Heavenly bodies were created on the fourth day. When we talk about the heavenly bodies, we refer to the sun, the moon, and the stars. Theologians have this attachment to the stars, that stars signifies human being. Yes. The moon is what ruled the night, while the sun ruled in the day. So the hour we have now is the sun that is in operation. So at night hour, the moon takes over. Then on the fifth day, God created birds and all kinds of sea creatures. We will now have the fish and others, sea creature, the toad, and host of others. Then on the sixth day rather, all kinds of animals, creeping objects, and man, who happened to be the top of the creation, was called to life on the sixth day. So God created man on the sixth day. And that's why we also agree with the position of theologians who say that during the creative day, it wasn't only God that was there. There were other heavenly bodies that were present. And that's why God said, let us make man in our own image. So there are people in heaven with God at that point. And that's why when Jesus Christ came to life in the new dispensation, he made us to believe and concord with what God said, that because Jesus Christ made us to say, in the creative day, I was with the Father. So Jesus Christ was there right from the creative day with the Father. So, and on the seventh day, God hallowed the day and he rested. And that is what we refer to as Sabbath day. So God rested. Originally, the Sabbath day falls to Saturday. Yes, originally by the Hebrews calendar. But today, the Sabbath day in our contemporary society is Sunday. And that's why on Sundays we go to church, we relax, we are free from all our exercise or activities. Now, the first creative story has some certain unique elements. In the first creative story, there are repetitions. Yes, the repetition in the first creative story that we can mark out is that it was good, and it was good, and it was good. So whenever or at each creation, God will say it was good, it was good, it was good. So it's a repetition. So God repeats that well, and it was good, and it was good. So some theologians interpret this that God used this clause to encourage himself from his practical work or from his practical exercise, that his handiwork is good or his handiwork is perfect. So God used it to encourage himself. There are another element that we can point out in the first creative story, that the first creative story was theoretical in nature, was theory. There was no any sense of practicality in it or scientific activities in it. It was basically theory, that is oral or verbalism, in the sense that God say, let there be light. So that God did not make any conjunction. God did not connect any cable or wire, either negative plus, either negative and positive together to give us the light. God did not do anything as regards to that. Then let there be firmament. God did not make any abracadabra. He only give command that let there be, and it came to be. So it was theory. Then in the area of let birds, let the earth give give life to birds and other sea creature. God did not make use of any object. God only give command, and these things came to life. So that is what we refer to as the theoretical creative story. And this theoretical creative story happened to be the first creative story in the Bible. Then the second, let me quickly say this, the second creative story was practical in nature. Yes, it was practical in nature, and it was arranged in chronological order to human belief. Why the second creative story was not. When we talk about the summary of the second creative story, is that in the second creative story, God make available heaven and earth, vegetation, what man will eat before God creates man. So, and that's why God make provision for where man will walk, where man will sleep, what man will eat, before God created man. So man was the second exercise or creative thing or object that God bring to life. Not unlike the first creative story, that it was man that came into existence, into existence. But the first creative story made us to understand that when God created heaven and earth and dew was falling, and then the next thing that God make available is man that will till the land. And so we have the list of the summary of the second creative story. Yes. So let's quickly look at our third phase of today's topic. We have the functions of man. That is why God created man and what God actually expected from man. We have a list of functions that God naturally bestowed on man. The first is to resume God creative activities, which means that man is an agent of God to continue from where God stopped. So the electricity light we have today, it is not God that gave it to man. So it is man handiwork. So and man came with this idea from his own prowess, from the power of thinking that God have given to man. So man continue from the creative activities where God stopped. Then to think and act as God on this planet, that is, we are God's ambassador on this planet. So our thought pattern should be in line with that of God. Then to categorize and name the creatures, things made by God or created by God. And of course, as we all know, if you look at the first creative story, God did not name anything. It was man. So everything that we have today that has name, classified under noun, objects, subjects, mention them. We are all names by man. Man named them. So it is man that it was Adam that made us to know that I'm a man. You are a man. You are a woman. You are this. And this thing is animal. This thing is grass. This one is vegetable. This one is mango. Man named them. So God did not name anything. Then empower man. Man is a power to choose between what is right and wrong. And that's why theoretically we have what we call the theory of free will. So you can choose to be a bad fellow. You can choose to be a good fellow. No. Yes, man has free will. So one may decide to choose to go to hellfire. One may decide to choose to go to heaven. It's a choice. So there is no force that is pushing you to maybe to say you must go to heaven. No. No. There is no written document that point to that you must go to heaven. No, if you want to go to hellfire, it's your choice. If you want to go to heaven, it's your choice. So that is free will of. Then to fulfill God's purpose, that is the essence of why God created man. Then to constantly have relationship and fellowship with God. This is the Jami essence of man on this model.